Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the What is Cycling podcast. I got to sit down with retired pro BMX racer Brandon Hopkins. We discussed his career, BMX racing, injuries, and his sweet nickname. So get ready to learn. How often do you go to skate parks?
Skate parks. I probably go. I wish I could go more, like when I was like younger, but probably is a concrete skate park that's like 15, 20 minutes from me. So I usually go there early mornings when I can. It just depends on what I'm riding, like what bikes I'm riding during that time. But maybe like once or twice a month, um, probably around there.
And so what's on the playlist?
Playlist. I mean, back in the day, it was like punk stuff, usually some rock, but since it switched to like more, that was like more indoor, like wood parks back then,
Yeah.
which we have one day on Dares, but I haven't been there in a while. But I usually go to the outdoor concrete park, Marsh Creek, that's like up the road from us. So I'm just usually just riding, cruising with no music, just talking to
Oh man, I
people.
haven't heard that name in so long. Daniel Dares?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I used to watch him all the time at X Games and stuff, and he was a stud. But isn't
yeah.
he from Austria or somewhere?
Um, not Austria. Gosh, I wish I should know this.
If I didn't ask you, you would be able to tell.
Yeah. But yeah, he actually he's an amazing rider. So actually, if you don't mind, I'll look that up real quick.
Yeah, no worries. And where is his park at? Isn't it
It's in
close to Raleigh?
yeah, it's in Apex.
Oh, okay, that's
Um,
awesome. And does he live near there?
I don't know where he actually lives. Where is he from? It's gonna be. I don't know where he's actually from or where he lives, but I know he lives in the area. Apex,
Yeah,
like I
that's
think it's
really
like Apex
awesome.
Holly Springs is where the park is.
Oh, that's so cool because I've seen him post about it on his Instagram, and I'm like, oh, it's so close, but
Yeah,
I've
it
never known
says
about it.
Daniel Dares Action Sports Complex, Holly Springs.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
So,
So now, did your first love come like into the BMX, not racing, or like kind of BMX stunts, or did it come into BMX racing and then you just kind of crossed over?
I mean, probably BMX racing, but we just used to have my cousin Thomas, who was like a brother to me, my older cousin. We were always like riding bikes and setting up ramps.
Yeah.
Before getting in trouble, like jumping off curbs and stuff, and before like the BMX racing stuff. But I mean, it was always just fun to me riding a bike and just trying to um, jump something. I think like originally I wanted to race dirt bikes. I've always been into like monster trucks when I was younger, monster trucks, like spaceships, and dirt bikes. And I never got a dirt bike. My dad was always like, "Oh, if you make honor roll, you get one." But I got into BMX before that, and then once I started racing, it sort of just sort of blew up. Like I just got infatuated with it. It was so much fun to me. So
That's still a pretty good trade off, though. I mean, it's not a dirt bike, but I mean, it really totally set you up in your career, so it's pretty cool.
yeah, I sometimes I it totally does. Which I have like a pit bike now, like a little tiny like 110. I ride with my friends and stuff, so it's a little dirt bike. But I really think about it sometimes, like, man, I wonder if I would have got a dirt bike, would I still? I don't know what would it could I have been really good as that, as far as racing. But I'm really thankful for the career I've had with BMX and the stuff, the people I've met, and just getting to ride bikes.
So yeah, I can attest to that what you said about having fun on the bike because following you on Instagram and like knowing you and meeting you a few times and stuff, like you definitely seem like the one person at the top of the list that has the absolute most fun on a bike all the time. Like everything is so
I,
like it's so
I
rad
try.
watching you.
Thanks, man. I try. Yeah, that's in the end of the day. I feel like that's what it's all about. That's why people do things, whatever sport or whatever they're into, is because it's fun. So I feel like for me, I don't know. I just really enjoy and having fun on anything two wheels. So
Yeah, see that's so awesome because I feel like with cycling, you can take it too far, especially if you're like training for a race or something like that. But with you, it's just all cool, calm, and collected, having fun. It doesn't matter. Like it's so awesome. So, do you want to tell everyone about your background in cycling? I'm sure they can pick up on the BMX undertones of this episode, but do you want to give everyone a background about you?
yeah, sure. I started, well, like I was saying, I always rode bikes, but started racing BMX when I was 11. Went to the track, um, and just pretty much 11 until I don't know, I think 30, 30-ish. I raced competitively. And then just like this is just like a skim, like a quick. Did BMX for a while, then I got into mountain bikes. BMX meaning like I raced, and then I rode dirt jumps and street ramps, all that stuff with my friends, and then my main focus was racing. And then somewhere like in like early 20s, I started racing some. A friend gave me a mountain bike because I had a lot of friends that were like, "Hey, you need to get on a mountain bike," and I was always like, "Nah, I'm not doing that. Like BMX is too cool. I'm not doing mountain bikes." Like because all I thought was nothing wrong with cross country, but that's what I thought was like mountain biking, like cross country or like they're like, "Oh, some of my friends are road biking," and I was like, "I don't. I just want to. I like jumping stuff, and I don't know. I like going fast and hitting jumps. But then I got into dual slalom, and from there I ended up going to race mountain bikes. Down, mountain bikes. I really got competitive in that. Got picked up by a school called Lindsey Wilson College. Got recruited to race at the school, sort of non-traditional student. Raced collegiate there. It was one of the best experiences of my life, being at that school. They treat cycling like NC State or UNC treats basketball or football.
Oh
So I
wow,
got
that's awesome.
scholarship. Yeah, I got scholarship to. I got recruited for BMX, mountain biking. Started racing downhill there. Started racing downhill out of the collegiate realm as well, and then I was always racing BMX at that point as well. So that's pretty much. Um, I just love all bikes and enjoy riding. Like I said, everything two wheels. So.
And so, how did the BMX racing? How did that affect your mountain biking? I assume you're like fantastic with handling skills and everything from BMXing and stuff. But how else did that affect your riding?
I like to think so. Sometimes I don't know. When I get on these trails, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to ride down that, especially racing like downhill and some of the dual slalom and four cross when I first started. But I really do feel like the BMX really gave me a like an edge against competition who maybe just was strictly like mountain bike or strictly dual slalom, strictly downhill, that type of thing. Um, but handling the fundamentals because in BMX racing, it's like a lot of you got to learn how to pump, you got to learn how to jump, manual, and I feel like just from my background and from racing a whole bunch of different events, some of those fundamentals might be overlooked or might not overlooked, but um, not like learn right when you're like a novice or beginner rider. Like BMX is pretty much like you take a 5-year-old to the track, they start learning how to pump like right away. So I really feel like it crossed over a lot, helped me out quite a bit, especially the jumping skills and mailing. And then when I got into downhill, I feel like it crossed over in certain ways, but BMX is like super smooth. Like the course is like super fine, perfect. You get into mountain biking, it's like rough, flat corners, no big huge,
Drops everything.
15-foot berm, no nothing like that. Front brake. So certain things were definitely I had to learn along the way, and it was sort of tough, but it was also like a good challenge. But I feel like overall, the crossover from BMX was great for a lot of my mountain biking.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And so I read that you had a nickname. And so do you want to explain the nickname of Butterman? Because I just thought that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that came about. I think when I was 11 or maybe 12. At the local track, and everyone in racing BMX like has a nickname. It
Oh,
doesn't
that's cool. It's like a
matter.
call sign.
Yeah,
That's
it's like
sweet.
you have a nickname. It's just you go to the sign up the moto sheet, like the moto that you're in or the race that you're in, and it's got Brandon Butterman Hopkins or so and so the other name. The nickname's on there. The announcer calls it, because they have announcers, so they say your nickname when you're on the gate getting ready, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was looking for a nickname. My dad, we were at the track practicing one night, and I did something on like a triple on the back last straight, and I guess one of the moms, one of the my fellow competitors, was there and was like, oh, to my dad, Otis, like, did you see that? What Brandon just did? And he's like, yeah, what? She's like, that was smooth as butter. And then like my dad, we've been looking for a nickname. He was like trying to come up with all this stuff, and then that one just like naturally was like, boom. He's like, that's it, Butterman.
That's
Um,
so cool.
and then it just from then on, like it just stuck. And I mean, some people now, I mean, to this day, like I go to some people like, Butterman, what's up? Butter, what's up?
Yeah.
It's really cool how it's just 11 years old and just sort of like if I go to a track, people were still racing or knew me back then. That's what they call me. So I guess I guess it's a good nickname to have.
Could be way worse.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I'm just thankful that people think my riding's smooth. Yeah, I try
yeah,
to,
no, that's a compliment.
yeah, but sometimes definitely like I'm like, man, I'm riding so sketchy right now. This nickname, but I'm thankful for that nickname. So that's how it came about. Just riding the track one night, and someone said, "Oh, that was smooth as butter." And then as I progressed in my riding and started getting faster and faster, more competitive, I would do things on the track that some people would just like, man, that's so smooth. Oh, that was that turn, the way you passed that guy, or when you hit that jump, it just stuck. So it's pretty
Yeah, that's
cool.
sweet. Do you remember any of the previous versions that your dad was trying to make stick of other nicknames?
No, I wish I did because I just remember like being 11 or 12 and my dad like on the way to the track or leaving the track, he's like, "Oh, what about this? What about?" And I'm like, "I don't. I wish I did because someone they were probably so corny. Like I was like, man, Dad, I don't force something on me. Just
Yeah.
then it was cool how it naturally came about. But I wish I did know, remember some of them, but I
Yeah, that'd
don't
be so
unfortunately.
cool. That's so funny. All right, so I want to kind of get into BMX racing because that's one thing that I don't really know a lot about. And I think it's fascinating because it's such high intensity.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't really know like will you just explain BMX racing? Like is it heats? Is it timed? Like what give us the whole layout of it.
So traditional BMX racing is basically it's like a sprint. If you think of it, most of the races are depending on the track and be depending on and the skill level how quick someone is. It could be anywhere from 25 to 35 ish seconds somewhere in there. Um,
Wow, that's fast. That
yeah,
is short.
and that's and depending on like the age and the skill level, like I said, it could be a little more time than that. But most of the tracks are like anywhere from like 1,200 to 1,500 feet long. Usually starting a hill. It's got a gate. 8 riders at a time can go. Like they call that a full gate if you have maximum amount of riders. Go down. It's got jumps, rollers, tabletop, step ups all throughout the track. Usually 3 to 4 big berms. Or turns that you ride and just go railing through. But it's really intense, and there's just action going on the whole way. But you start at the gate, you stand up, they have a cadence, riders ready, watch the light, gate falls, and then you go just pedaling as fast as you can, trying to, get whoever gets to the finish line, wins. Whoever gets to the first wins. So basically, just an all out, not brawl, but just
It's a drag
really,
race.
yeah, really intense, really fun to watch. But yeah, definitely a sprint. Does take some. It's like more anaerobic, but it's a really cool sport. But yeah,
And so do you ever like have teammates and race like with your teammates or how does that work? And then if you do, like do you ever have any tactics or anything or is it just everyone all out full gas
yeah.
first to the finish
So
line?
so depending on like local races, you usually have less riders in your heat. What they call a moto. But you go on. You start. You have like uh, age groups start from. I mean, I've seen like 4-year-olds racing, 3-year-olds on the track, but it goes anywhere from you know youngest like 4 to 5 start. You have novice. The classes are novice, intermediate, expert, and then pro or elite. And then as far as teammates, really just depends. I mean, like I have friends, like your friends, like off the track. I typically was not or dirty. I didn't want to crash. I didn't. I was more conservative with my riding, if I had to do something to make a pass, I was going to try to do it clean. I might give you an elbow
Mm.
because it happens, especially if someone's in qualifying spot. They're taking four out of your moto, and I'm in fifth. I'm probably going to really make sure I get past that
Yeah.
guy that's in fourth to get that qualifying spot. But typically, yeah, you do race against teammates if they're your age in your class. And it just typically you want to be nice to your teammates, and usually you like your teammates, so you guys might tag team. I remember being when I was on the national team, my buddy Adam Pollock, we'd be in like some races all over the country, and we'd be in each other's moto, and I mean I would see someone sort of push him up in the turn, so I would go and um, and sort of help him out. So
Yeah.
you definitely know it's crazy the amount of stuff that's going on the track, but it's like someone's behind you, and sometimes there's a racer that is known to be dirty, and I would always get nervous with them. Like if they're behind me, like I gotta go get to the finish line.
Yeah.
They would just come in and blow you up, like for no reason. Sometimes they just wanted to just like ride, non-cautious and just go crazy.
Yeah, full
Um,
contact.
yeah, and take both of you out. But yeah, typically, you can have teammates, and there definitely is some contact in some of the races, but it just really depends on the rider and their personality. All that stuff comes into play too. But
Yeah, and it sounds aggressive, the contact and stuff, but I know it's not because like there's contact in crit races and road races and
oh,
stuff. It's just such
crits
tight
are
quarters that it's impossible not to have contact.
yeah, crits are. I mean, that's pretty intense. But yeah, it is impossible not to have contact, but sometimes it's inevitable. Like
Hmm.
might try to you're at a big national or even just a local race, and the last turn you're trying to win, guy goes up in the turn, you go under. You used to have more when they had dirt turns. Now all the turns are like usually paved, um, but you could still go under, front tire washes out, and then you accidentally crash and take him out, and then it's like, oh, you took me out. But sometimes it's just like I was just trying to win. Like that person would have done the same thing in that situation. So
Hmm. And so, how have you seen BMX change? Because you were just mentioning the dirt jumps to the paved, or the dirt corners into the paved. So, like, how
yeah.
else have you seen BMX change throughout your career?
Like I haven't raced since probably 2013 or 2014 competitively. I've ridden a couple of tracks here and there because I would love to ride tracks. I would ride a BMX track if I had like enough land. I would have a BMX track in
That'd
my
be
yard
so awesome.
or some type of pump track just to. I feel like it really develops cycling. It's great exercise. It's just super fun. But I started racing in '95, and most of the tracks were all dirt, usually big dirt turns. And then somewhere along the way, like in Raleigh, I grew up racing in Raleigh, North Carolina, Capital City BMX, really cool track. Um, I remember racing there when they had dirt turns, and it was so much work. Like when it would rain, um,
Oh
and
yeah, I
you
didn't
would
even think about
just,
that.
yeah, you would just have to. I mean, these turns are like, I mean, 10, 15. I mean, they're massive, huge berms that flow around, and it would take so much elbow grease and work from volunteers to get them smooth. They started paving them. A lot of tracks had it, which increased the speed on the track and less maintenance. And then somewhere in there, I think I don't know, that probably came about 2005, 2006. They started using this like stuff called soil tack, which basically like is a sort of like a glue that they put on or like a slurry that they put on the top of the dirt, which makes it really hard. It makes it less. You don't have to. It's less maintenance, but it increases the speed as well. But it really hurts to fall on. It's not as much give as like regular dirt, but it puts like a seal on top of the dirt. And those things have really changed BMX. But I really feel like when BMX went to the Olympics, um, the, that really changed a lot of stuff in the sport as far as how it was looked at from the public eye. The tracks, they don't race on traditional BMX tracks. So I remember when the Olympics came and everyone's like, oh, like, is that what you do? And I'm like, that's no. Like, at the time, it was only like a certain handful of people had the access to ride those tracks. They popped up here and there around the United States, but it's like I think the starting hill on those compared to like a regular track, it could be like you know I don't know, starting hill where you start and go down could be 10 to 15 feet tall. And I think the Supercross hill is 8 to 8 meters tall, which is like 26. It's like they
Holy
walk
cow.
upstairs to get to the starting hill. Definitely
Dang.
a different version of BMX. Those athletes are amazing. The commitment and the talent, but they're easily, they go on the gate, they come down. It's usually like a gap jump at the bottom. Usually at least 25 to 30 feet of a gap jump. That you're not everyone, the men and women are like jumping all the way over. Gap jumps around the whole track, most of the track. The elite riders race. Big, huge paved turns, usually like a big pro section. And a lot of them have like where they jump over because the men and women elite riders race a different track after the first turn typically. The men go to a pro section and the women ride what they call, I guess, the amateur or the women's side. But yeah, that's changed a lot. But I mean, it's different. Like when I started racing BMX, there's a lot of big, box names like GT, Powerlight, Arbor, all these big names in the '90s that aren't. I mean, they're prominent now, but it's just different.
Hmm.
Mongoose, Robinson. There's a ton of names. I remember going to races and it was like 18 wheelers, like semi trucks pulling up for the factory teams. It's almost like going to a motocross race. And it's like, oh,
Oh wow, that's
That's
cool.
GT Factory. That's Powerlight. That's like, and they're all chilling under the pits like a motocross race. If you've seen that, and it's like, I mean, that's not really there anymore. But that was amazing to get to see all that. Some of the big sponsors that were in it. I feel like I don't know. Clips came into the picture late '90s, early 2000s, and that sort of changed things too. Where some people like ride clip. A lot of people ride clips now. Where it used to be like '95 when I first started racing, it was mostly people were riding flat pedals. Um,
Wow.
the pros are all riding flat pedals, and they were super fast. It was just a different talent and skill that has been developed since it's sort of changed into this like um, I mean, people pros back then were serious, but I feel like now it's more of this like serious. Like you see all the Instagram people putting up videos of themselves like spinning out on like rollers or like working out. Where like some of the pros that I remember following that were so cool that raced in like road trails were. I mean, they were in the gym, but they also could ride like amazing dirt jumps and skate parks. It's just a different all around rider. Whereas now I feel like they're more like business. It's like most of them are strictly racing. So it's just changing a lot of different avenues, but definitely on a bigger platform. I mean, they're in the Olympics, so that's a pretty big deal when a sport gets in the Olympics.
Yeah, no kidding. You talking about everyone riding clips now and stuff. I did the same. I switched to clips and everything, but I rode a bike without clips and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I would lift up like my foot and the pedal wasn't sticking with it and I was like, what is going on? And I was like, I got to get rid of this.
Yeah. Do you ride? I'm guessing you ride with your bike packing. I mean, typically you clipped in, right?
Yeah, I do the Crank Brothers
Yeah.
just cuz I feel like they're more um user friendly and easier to learn how to get into.
Yeah.
And then I started using those to learn how to use clips and everything and then I just never got off of them. So I've had Crank Brothers since I'd started using them, so
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, and that just
And
reminded.
so
Was that
oh,
guy?
go ahead.
I was gonna say that just reminded me like when I was racing, probably when I was 17 or 18. Most of the people that I race, it's another way that sports change. Like there's a guy who's my favorite pro. He passed away. His name is Kyle Bennett. He's in the first Olympics, and he was a super talented, smooth rider. Just amazing talent, nicest guy. But when I was amateur, Kyle was like he's from Texas. He was this pro that showed up. He was racing, still racing flats, and he was kicking everyone's tail. He had so much skill in like the rhythm section and stuff. And I remember being like, I want to be like that. Like, I mean, he was just super smooth. But then he went from, which I didn't mention earlier. There's like two different pro levels of in BMX. There's like for the men, it's like A pro, which is like semi pro. Like you're pro, but it'd be like semi pro in baseball maybe. But it's A pro, and then you work your way up to elite. Elite is like the top dogs. And but yeah, Kyle was worked his way all the way to elite, and just was dominant. But he clipped in. He had to clip in to be competitive in that area. And I just remember being at they call it the Grand Nationals. It's in Tulsa. Well, it's been in Tulsa, Oklahoma for the past several years, but it's the last. It's always on Thanksgiving, the last huge national of the year. That's where you get all your national titles and all these things. The pros. That's like the last final race for them to get their pro points and go for the pro number one title. But I remember I when I was I think I was in 17 or 18. I finally made the Grands main event. And it's usually like, I mean, you have like 60, 80, 100 riders depending on your age group. People from all over the country are there. But I was like I was the ones on like in the gate that were on platforms. Like I was still the only. I remember looking over, everyone was clipped in, and I was still on flat pedals. And it was just one like a testament. I made all my mains that weekend. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. And then when I started trying to go towards pro, there like some of my mentors that were pros were like, you gotta have to clip in at some point. So I think I was on 19. I finally clipped in, and
It's
it
a
was
whole different
fun.
ball game. Just to
Yeah,
know that like you can pull your foot up and the pedal's right there, so you can get
yeah,
even more umph under the step or the pedal.
exactly. And with BMX, it definitely helps at that start. If anyone's watching and you want to go look at some gate starts, YouTube how they set up, stand up, and then they go through on the cadence. It's just amazing. The first five pedals, you'll see where clips would really help get that extra like pull, just overall more torque to the pedals. So
And so it's BMX, it's a standing start, right? Like you're clipped in on both feet and you're like kind of balancing. And
yeah.
then as soon as the
Um,
gate drops, you just
Yeah, so if you're riding
start sending it.
flats, yeah, if you're riding flats or clips, as soon as that cadence comes on, riders will set them up. Like you'll be sitting there, and then they hit the button for the gate. Riders will set up. You stand up. You just wait, and it's a random start. Yeah, they got a trio of lights, or you can listen. And then when it goes through towards the end, you're like, you'll wait, and it's like boo doo doo doo, and it's like the light. If you watch the lights, or if you listen, like you know when to go. You practice all that timing, and it's just like you take off. It takes a lot of form, quickness, power, and it's just the expert and elite riders are just amazing. How much power they generate, and you could be like a smidge, like a hair off the timing, and you'll notice like they just get swallowed up.
Oh,
It's
dang.
just crazy how like at the they're a full gate and it's like they just you get swallowed up if you don't get out first. So makes the start makes it a lot better. You don't have to get started to win, but it definitely makes it a lot easier if you can start well.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. That's so awesome. And so you have like 60 guys in the same category as you. And so it's heats. And so like
It's heat,
you'll
so you basically it's like for amateur it's like you might have
like how
six.
many rounds is it?
So you'll have typically at the big races they do like if you're local they usually do like a three that's a smaller event. They do three moto transfer three like you have three times to make it to the main event.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That is some serious dedication because I'm like, if it's not spread out by the end of that final race, it must not be fun to watch because you guys are going to be so sluggish from racing all that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I mean, everyone knows. Yeah, I haven't raced. I've been away from like the racing side, but I have a lot of friends that still race. So I see their posts and talk to them when I see them, and it's. I mean, you definitely know what you need to do. Like it's a lot of downtime, like especially if you're like one of the top runners, like you might qualify out really early and just not have to race until the semifinal. So you're just sort of sitting around all day, and then that comes around. So you can just start your process, start warming up, that kind of thing, get ready, get your blood flowing, and then it's time to go do work. But it is a lot of your hope. It's just a lot. You may make sure you're hydrated, eating, and so you're not too sluggish when that main event comes around.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. And so BMX, that's like you're wearing elbow pads, knee pads, right? And like, what all
It,
do you have to
it
wear? What's
depends. Like I
required?
always wore elbow pad, knee pads, full face helmet. Um, but some people choose to not wear knee pads, not wear elbow pads. Um, but typically, mostly everyone is in a full face, long sleeve shirt, race pants. You don't have to have race pants, but you could be jeans and long sleeve shirt. But typically, elbow pads, knee pads, gloves. Some people don't wear gloves; they like the way the glove feels. They like the way the grip feels without. They just use some dirt before they go up and start a hill.
Yeah.
I was always one with gloves. Like I went down a couple of times and without gloves, I was like, nah, never, never again. But for me, I just wanted to prolong my riding. Like I think I read some article on Ride BMX or Snap BMX. Snap's not around anymore, but those way back when some pro street rider was just like, yeah, like wear pads because I want to prolong my riding. And I read that and was like, okay, I'm not too cool for school. Like I'm gonna start wearing pads and I want to ride as long as I can to protect my body for when I do go down. But so yeah, it's just elbow pads, knee pads, full face helmet, gloves. Same, similar to like what people ride like in mountain biking probably if they're riding like at a bike park or something.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point too, because I used to actually be sponsored skateboarding way back in the day, and
Really?
so yeah, so I think it's so funny that there's like that stigma with not wearing helmets and stuff. Like I don't know what it is about it. Like I don't
I
want my
don't.
brain to be jello.
I don't
So
know. Dude, I have no idea. Even like with BMX, there's been some really, really talented BMX riders that have had some really bad head injuries. And I thought, oh, now will be the time where everyone's like, hey, I'm gonna kids wear your helmet. We're pro, we're gonna wear a helmet. But a lot of the pros still like a lot of them have started wearing their helmets. I feel like they see the in game and like how important that is. And there's been a few of them that have been wearing helmets, doing everything right, and still get a really bad head injury. Um, but I don't know what I've never understood. Like I remember looking on the magazines and people were going down crazy handrails and doing like crazy flips. And I'm like, no helmet, no
yeah,
nothing
it's so
on. And I'm
insane.
like,
It's so stupid. Like
yeah,
in the
I'm like
grand
to
scheme
me,
of
I just
things.
think it's really silly. And I mean, each their own. But and at the end of the day, the only reason I care is I care about that person. And I know like they're a really great rider, and I don't want them to slip up, just hop over by accident. Anything could happen. Hop over a curve and hit their head, and it's like, oh wow, I wish something small. It could be the smallest thing. But some of these guys, they goes and women, they go so big, and it's like, dude, just wear a helmet. Like,
Yeah, it's like I watch Brad Sims all the time on
ooh,
Instagram, and maybe one day we'll be able to get him on here. But he is like,
that'd be awesome.
yeah, he is so insane. Like his stuff is so cool, and he just his wall plants and stuff. And I'm like, and when he jumps over rails and everything, I'm like, if you just catch your toe or
So
anything,
talented.
like any peg, you're done. And I'm like, I don't want you to have to drink your meals through a straw. Like I want you to be functional forever. So
Yeah.
like, please be careful.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's just, I mean, life is so short, and I feel like at the end of the day, we're all doing something that we love and enjoy. And for me, I was just like, when I read that pro guy, I mean, I was always sort of wearing pads. I usually wore my helmet, but then after that, I was like, if this guy's saying he's a paid athlete and he's like, dude, just it's just to protect. I'm wearing knee pads to protect the longevity of me riding, and it just clicked with me, and I was like, you know what? And after a couple of times, I remember like racing BMX, and for a long time, it's like you start, and I just had a helmet, and then you crash your knees, like crap, like I don't want that happening again. Like, okay, I'm gonna start wearing knee pads. But then for the longest time, I did not wear knee elbow pads, and my dad was like, Brandon, you need to start wearing some elbow pads. Like you're sticking to the sheets when like it's all that. I mean, the BMX, like
Oh yeah.
you get pretty tore when you crash. I mean, you're going like 20, 30, 40, like I'm not 40, but like you're going pretty fast. And then you eat it in a pavement turn or on dirt and just like I mean you get straight. I got so many things over my body from like
Yeah.
all my years of BMX. And I just remember like, okay, I'll start. At first, I was like, I don't like the way they feel, and then my dad's like, I mean, you probably get over that. You'll probably like it better when you crash. You like the way it feels better than how your elbow looks now. And then I got some elbow pads, and I crashed like really bad one time. I was like, oh, my elbows are like still there. This is awesome. So I always just wear pads after that. So
Yeah, that was I had one incident. So me and my wife, we lived in Colorado, and like 4 days before we moved back, there was loose gravel in
oh,
Longmont, and they didn't put up a sign that says like they're about to pave this road. So
yeah.
I just hit this like loose gravel at like 22 miles an hour, and there's
Oh
two
my.
old ladies. Like one's on a sidewalk across the street, and another one's like probably 15 feet from me in her yard, like watering her yard. I just wipe out. I shred like my whole right side and stuff. And there,
Oh,
I snap my derailleur. I pretty much have to walk home because I'm like point 3 or 4 miles from the apartment.
oh,
And
just tore
so,
up.
yeah, I like got in the shower, did the hydrogen peroxide. So that never feels good. But that night, It was the worst night of my life. I didn't get any sleep. I was just so irritated. Like the sheets kept sticking to my injuries. I took aspirin instead of ibuprofen, so I couldn't get comfortable. My blood was just
Oh,
boiling and like it was
I
brutal.
I know the feeling. Like, but yeah, that's never fun, dude. Um, so yeah, I just pads, helmet. Even now, like put my pads on. Which reminds me, I need to get my kids. I need to get them some like at least some knee pads. But anytime we're riding, I'm like, even if they're just like out in the parking lot or just like on my helmet, they all know like they before they get their scooter or bike or whatever, they go get their helmet because they know they'll get in big trouble if they don't. So
Yeah, yeah, that's smart. That's the right move. And so now that we're kind of touching on it, but what are some of the injuries that you've sustained? Because I know like you talked about the dirt being softer to land, not exactly softer, but easier to land in than gravel and stuff. But like, what's some of the injuries you've sustained over your career?
for me, like for when I was racing BMX, I mean I was pretty blessed with not. I had like no real bumps and scrapes and stuff, but I was pretty blessed with not having like any bones broken. Some of my friends. I mean, it was like a lot. Every season is like they were getting like collarbone and wrist, and I'm like, oh man, I don't
Ooh.
want that to happen. It's just, and that's just some of the common stuff. But for me, like I feel like I was in the biggest thing was like head injuries. For me, seventh grade, I got my first concussion riding the track. And still to this day, it was just the weirdest thing. I don't even know. I mean, of course, I don't know what happened, but it's just so like I'll tell the story. Like, so I was at the track. I think it was seventh grade, so like 12 or 13. And my dad like was a volunteer at the track, so we showed up early to set everything up. I'm like, oh, cool, getting my riding in, just warming up. I think I might have been intermediate then. I might have still been novice. I don't know, but I was. I guess I was trying to jump this double on the last straightaway that I jumped 1,000 times before. Um, or something. And then I just remember like waking up, it was like blood. And back then you had like an open face helmet.
Ooh.
So they were a lot of people were it was before full face before like safety. I would say that safety has come a long ways since then for all action sports. Um, but back then it was a lot of open face helmets. You might have a what they call a Java or like a chin strap that went across that protected your face.
Mm.
Um, but it didn't really do what a full face does. But I had that. I woke up and like there's like blood. I didn't know where I was. Walked off and like just sitting. I was just like sitting there. And then some local kid was like, "Brandon, you all right?" And he comes down to me. I'm just like, I just remember being like, just go get my dad. And he was like, Mr. Otis, Brandon. My dad was like, when I was racing, he'd get more like protective. Like he see you crash, like he gets sort of upset, like, oh, what are you doing? Because he's scared. But I went up there, had my face is all busted up, bleeding. He's like, go up to the community center. There's a bathroom and stuff. Go in there, get cleaned up, and come back. He's still helping set up. I went in there, I remember going in there and looking around, and everyone was like staring at me, and I was just like, I was watching some kids for foosball. It'd be so funny to have a movie about it, but like I was sitting there watching them play foosball, and then I didn't know why I was in there. Walked back out, walked down to my dad at the track, and he's talking to someone, and he turns around. And I'm still looking the same. He's like, Brandon, dude, He's like, what did I tell you? Like, he's like, go clean yourself up. I went back in there again. My poor dad. I went back in there again and didn't do anything. Came back and he's like, "What?" He's like, "What, Brand? Like what?" And then someone else pulled him aside. I was like, "Otis, I think you might need to take Brandon." Like, and he's like, "I think you might have a concussion." And so that was like my first concussion experience. I got another concussion actually, um, riding. Actually, I'll concussion, and then the next big injury was like I dislocated my shoulder racing the national in California.
Mm.
Um,
That doesn't feel good.
yeah, my left shoulder going down the first turn. The first turn all weekend, the dirt at this track was just, I think it was San Bernardino was our we were racing. The dirt of this track was just falling apart all week. The track was getting more and more chewed up. It didn't really compact or stick together. First turn, I'm going in like I was racing pro then. I hit like not a hole, but like something that was like it made my me go over my weight move on the front of my bike.
Yeah,
I
it
just
just
remember like
shifted it
going
enough.
full force. I had to win to get to the next round. And I'm like, I had a good start. I'm like right in first. I'm like right in second on the outside of the dude in first. I'm like, dude, if I can just get, I'm just gonna rail this turn and just hit this second. So I've been hitting these doubles really good all weekend. And my skill usually with racing was my rhythm section. So I was like, if I can get there, it's on. I'm gonna make it. Front end hits this hole. I go all the way over. Hands pop off when I land, like up like this. They say to never do that. Land, and I remember it was like such a hard impact. My shoulder, I didn't know at the time, pops out, and I'm like, oh, and like everyone crashes, and I'm like, oh, grab your bike. The first thing you always want to grab your bike and just get going because you can still there's still valuable spots. Dude, I get up, my arm is like you can't. My arm is still like this. I didn't know it. Adrenaline's pumping. I'm like running around. People are probably like, what the heck? I'm like running around, grab my bike, and I'm trying
It's
to
like, why is he waving?
yeah, and then I'm like, my arm, like, what the heck? Like, it was seriously stuck, like, up like this. And I'm like,
Oh
oh my
man.
gosh. So I go to the infield where the officials are, and I, like, sit down in the hay bale, and they're like, yeah, you're not going to be able to race. You know, just sit here. And I'm like, what's up my shoulder? Like, it won't, like, I'm still like, dude, I can get up. And they're like, no, like, just sit here and wait for the medics. I'm like, medics for what? Like, they're like, I'm like, what's so my team manager, guy named Bob, he dislocated his shoulder. He had multiple shoulder things going on at the time, just from previous injuries. So he comes over and is like, he starts feeling my back. He's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just need to, get going. He's like, he starts feeling my back, and he's like, oh, your shoulder's out. He's like, that pocket right there, like that's where your shoulder needs to be. So the
Oh goodness,
medics,
that's
yeah, the
gross.
medics wouldn't put it in. Medics wouldn't put it in. But he like puts it in, and I thought it was gonna be like the movies. You know, all the movies are all like, oh, it's like, and it's like I was like, oh, please, man, don't. He's like, no, it won't be like that. And he's like, I could feel it inside, like outside the socket, and then it finally just went back in. And it was like, oh, that feels so much better, like really smooth.
Oh, just
Um,
kind of like a release of pressure or
yeah,
something.
release of pressure and pain. And then they put me in a sling, and then when I got back, I went to like not ortho, but like a doctor. They're like, oh, be in the sling forever long. But then it kept coming out. Once that I tore my further down the road, I ended up tearing my labrum, which basically is like some tissue that holds everything together tight. My
Mm.
shoulder would just keep coming out like, and I ended up going to a race in New York, a national, leading the race. I'm like, yeah, I'm winning. I got a good gate, got the whole shot. Um, go to push down the backside of the landing of the tabletop, and it's like my shoulder's like shoot just comes out. My arm is stuck down, so I can't I don't have the back
Yeah,
and
you
forth
can't pump
the
the
mobility to
range of
pump.
motion. Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is going on? It's almost like having your fork locked out on your mountain bike going down a
Oh
downhill trail.
dang.
It was like
And
that.
that was as soon as you pumped.
Yeah, I pumped it and just slid out. And I was like, what's
Oh
going on? But
goodness.
then everyone passes me. I can hear the announcer like, what's going on with the Butterman? Hopkins is going to the back. I'm like, dude, I just like come out of the first turn, like tip over. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, oh crap. I was like, I realized like my shoulder's out again. The medics won't put it in because they have a weird thing with like liability. My dad comes over. I had to talk him through it, how to put it in. I'm like, Dad, this has happened before. I was like, you're gonna have to do this. I guided him. He put it in for me. And then I talked to the same team manager. He's like, you're going to end up having to have the surgery like I did. So I ended up having to have like get my shoulder scoped. They fixed everything and haven't had any issues since. That was like 2006. But I haven't had any issues since then. And then somewhere in like, I think when we first got married, I was riding a pump track. This is when I was getting more into mountain biking, and I had my mountain bike and was riding a pump track and just got a really bad concussion. Like went over this probably going really fast. My friend that was with me was like, dude, you were moving. Like when I came, like after I came to, it was better. I went to, it was like a double turn. It was like a turn with, it was like two turns within a turn, but it was like a turn or roller in the middle of the turn and then another left. Like you were turning
Oh,
left.
okay. I
And I
see what you're
went,
saying.
yeah, and I went and like pumped into the first part of it, went to really pump down the roller to get, and my front end, when I came on the roller, my front end was like too high in the turn and just went off and everything it just like slung me and everything like lights out like straight to face the top of the turn and
Mm.
was just gone like and it was that was a bad one concussion and then thankfully like the concussion protocol wasn't in like it is now but someone recommended us to some doctor here in Raleigh that was like they specialize in concussions for like football players, high school and college, and that
Mm.
was like one of the best things I probably have ever gone through because I probably would have came back way early, but they like did all these stress tests with me, and it was like a process. But they were like, no social media, don't don't check your email, don't look at TV. Your brain is basically rebooting, and I never thought of it like that. So
Yeah,
I
you can
didn't
like
do.
overload your brain and stuff and like
Yeah,
kill the
and I
sensors. Yeah.
exactly. And I remember trying to check. I was trying to work to get a new sponsor at the time. Who would email me that same day, and I remember trying to be at the. I was checking my email, and it was like everything was so. It was like I felt like almost like when a computer glitches. It was like I read the email, but it was like I cannot. And my wife was like, "Close that! Don't." I could not comprehend. And then the next day, I went to that the brain specialist, and they were like, "Yeah, no social media.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, wear sunglasses. Like if you're in like a bright area, like inside, wear sunglasses." But yeah, that's been the gist of my injuries is like those two concussions, and then like the dislocated shoulder having surgery. So thankfully, I've been like I said, been blessed with like pretty injury free, but scrapes, bruises, that kind of thing. Probably some stuff that was fractured at one point, but I just kept pushing through. But yeah, thankfully that's been the most that I've had.
Man, that story about you and your dad with the first concussion.
Oh
Concussions, dude, that's fantastic. That's such a great story. I mean, concussions suck, but that is such a great story.
yeah, it's like when my dad passed in 2019, but he used to always tell people like or in the 2019 2000 beginning of 2020, my dad passed, miss him, but he he would always tell people that story like because he was like very like he could tell stories and very comical, loudest dude in the room usually, but he always like tell that story to people like along the track. Like, yeah, Brandon got his concussion one time. I told him like 3 or 4 times to go in the building, and but little on me, I didn't realize like he keeps coming back and he looks the same. Like,
That's so awesome.
yeah, that was
That's
just
so
really
funny.
crazy too. Because like I remember like we went to pick my dad went to pick my mom up from work. He's like, "Hey, we gotta take Brandon to the hospital." And he like when mom got in the car, I was like, I looked over to him like, "Who is that?" He was like, "Brandon, that's your mom." And she was like, "What?" Like he's like, "Oh, he's Brandon." Like he's like, "Jocelyn, he's
You don't understand the day that he's just
yeah, yeah."
had.
And then
He
I
doesn't
remember,
understand the day that he's just
yeah,
had.
and I was like on drumline, I think in middle school, and I remember like my drumsticks were in the back, and my dad was like in marching band. My dad was like, he told me that I looked at him in the back seat and was like, I like jumped and was like, what? I was like, wait, because I was like, oh yeah, I gotta get ready for drum tryouts. He was like, Brandon, you did that 2 weeks ago. I'm like, it was just crazy, dude. Like, I just quite the experience. Like, I was out of school for a couple of days, and my lip was all. I already had big lips, but my lips are all busted and like puffy. Have you seen
Oh yeah, and
the
swollen.
movie
Yeah,
Hitch?
yeah, yeah. When he has a seafood allergy. Yeah, yeah.
It was like that. They're probably not that drastic, but I felt like that's how I looked. I didn't want to go to school. My parents were like, "Go ahead, your lips are like you're fine," and I was like, "No, they was gonna make fun of me." But yeah, thankfully, yeah, that story is. I still think about it now. Like, dude, that is just. I can remember at 11 or 12, whatever old I was, going into that community center and just looking around like everyone's staring at me, and I just don't have a clue what's going on. And I'm like, why am I in here? And I just like a zombie walk back down to my dad, and he's like, dude, go back in there, go back in there, get the blood off your face.
Yeah.
I'm just oblivious.
That reminds me. So I got so I had 6 wisdom teeth. I had like
Oh,
instead of 4. So apparently they drugged me up really good. And so my dad took me to or like he was going to go into the grocery store and get me ice cream. And for some reason, he let me go in with him, and I'm still just blitzed out of my mind. And so I go through the line apparently and all this stuff. We get back to the car, and then and I was living by myself. And so I go back to the grocery store like days later, and apparently the cashier was the same cashier, and she's like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "That's a weird question to ask somebody."
yeah.
Because I'm like, usually just like, "Hello, how are you?"
You're
or
like,
something, but not like, "How are you
excuse
feeling?"
me? Like I don't even know
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and I was like, good. How are you feeling?" And so she was like, "How's your teeth and stuff?" I was like, "How do you know this?" She was like, "Your dad brought you in here." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "I gotta call my dad and like chew him out." I'm like, "Don't let me go in there like that. My face is swollen." I'm like, I look like a
Yeah,
chipmunk. I'm
people are
like, "Come
probably
on,
like,
man."
"Oh, that poor guy, poor kid. Oh man!" Like, and you're
Yeah.
like, how are you feeling?" You're like, "What?"
Yeah, I was so confused. I'm like, "That's not the first question you should ever ask someone
No,
unless you're a doctor in a
yeah,
hospital."
you don't know me. Like what? Like yeah.
Yeah, I'm at Food Line getting groceries. Yeah, it
Oh,
was
that's
so
too
wild.
good, too good.
And so you mentioned your dad a lot. And so how important was it to have him as a supporter? Because it sounds like you found out about BMX, but he kind of got you into the sport. So how was it being like that close to your dad and stuff? Because I look at a lot of other um athletes and stuff in their careers, like Tiger and his father and stuff,
Yeah,
and like how did it like mold and shape your career?
yeah. It was very valuable having my dad. I think it didn't matter what I ever did. As far as like my dad, just my parents both wanted me to be successful whenever I did. Always had supported me, but as long as I was doing something like constructive and positive, something that was good for like they didn't care what. Hey, cool. But then when I found BMX, it was like I mean at that point in my life, I was doing like so many things. The only child of my parents, like gymnastics, Boy Scouts, basketball, baseball, like a lot of traditional sports. And it was, I just remember coming home. I got a book from the library, basically from the book fair, and it was like, because I always get like I said earlier, I like dirt bikes and racing, cars, monster trucks. Came back, I found this BMX book, and I remember just showing my dad, and it was like, Dad, like I couldn't wait to show him when he got home. Like, Dad, check this out. He's like, Okay, Brandon, like
That's a
all right,
pretty expensive
yeah.
hobby.
He's like, all right, like you're talking about dirt bikes, and I think, and he was like, okay, BMX, and he's like, but you're already doing all these things, like you got to choose something. And then he was like, if you can find a track, that's in close to us, I'll take you. He didn't know it was a director in the back of this book that I found. I go back there, a little, 11-year-old me, North Dakota, North Carolina, Charlotte, Raleigh, Capital City BMX. And then I go run to him, tell him. He's like, oh, he's man, he was honest. He's like, all right, you found one.
He was like, "Man, I thought that was gonna be way harder."
Yeah, yeah. So we found one. Told me I had to quit some stuff if I really want to get into it. But we went that Sunday and it stuck. But I feel like for me, my dad, his father wasn't really like present. Like he had a dad, but never had. His mom was really a supporter, and my dad was really good at baseball. In his time, he grew up in an era that it's a lot harder for a black male to be prominent, something like that. But he was really, really good at baseball and get just a all around great athlete. So most of his athleticism, I have to give that to him. But yeah, I think for him, he never had that support from a male figure in his life, so he did the best he could to support me, and it was like Dad's always he told me like whatever you do, like basketball or will you get into whatever it is, like I'm gonna be there to make sure that that I support you and like I want you to be successful. So it was huge for me, like because I know a lot of people, and I never took that for granted because I know a lot of people don't have that, whether it's a mom or dad. But to have a parent that's like really into what you're doing, it was. I mean, I would not have gone. I didn't like win all these titles or go to Olympics, but I was pretty successful in what I did. And even now, like riding the people some of the adventures I get to do. I mean, that's all. A lot of it's because of my dad, supporting me back then, and supporting me through my pro career. But it's huge. It was pretty much everything. I don't know if I mean, I really liked riding, but I don't know if I would have went as far without that support. So it's pretty much everything for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome too. Like I know I can speak from my experience as well. Like I was always doing like baseball and basketball and stuff, and so until I got found skateboarding and everything, and my dad's like, you know what, whatever you want to do, you can do it, but if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it to the best of your abilities.
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, okay, I got it.
Same.
And then, but it's really funny, like if he had to work or something, and like which hardly ever happened, but like if he wasn't able to make some event or some sporting outing, it was like, man, I'm not going to do as good because my dad's not there. And it's not true, but it's like you just
How
have
you
that
felt?
feeling because it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's kind of
totally,
like your armor going in.
totally.
Okay, so if someone came to you and was like, hey, I want to get into BMX racing, how would you train them? And like, what would you tell them to get started?
I think I would just tell someone like, you know, just start with what you have. Um, don't need to. I mean, because it's easy to get into these sports and be like, I need this bike, I need these shoes, this. Just start with what you have, and just let the learning process come naturally. I mean, I think now like pump tracks weren't around when I was growing up. It was basically like you had the track or a skate park, or like trails, like dirt jumps. Um, but I think like now, I mean, like my kids haven't raced BMX, but I've had them on pump tracks, and they know how to, like, they're learning how to pump and get that fundamental practice that you only used to be able to get at the BMX track. So I think if I would just tell them like ride a pump track, really, I would say ride. Like I rode like trails, skate park. I feel like all that helped my riding as a racer. But I would just tell them be easy on yourself. It's just you're learning something new. It's a challenge, and just ride as much of the track as you can. Go to pump tracks to get practice. That type of thing. Nothing special. Just starting out. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you are your own worst critic.
yeah,
So yeah, definitely go easy on yourself.
totally, totally.
What was the process in you getting sponsored? Like, did people come up to you after you started winning races, like, hey, we want to sponsor you, or did you reach out to them and ask, like, hey, I'm a rider, I
Yeah,
want to get
yeah.
X sponsor or
For
whatever?
me, I feel like I was pretty like right place, right time in a way. There's like tons of a lot of stuff. The industry's like West Coast, so a lot of the really competitive riders had sponsors. A lot of big sponsors are out that way. So um, for me, I was like, man, how am I gonna get sponsored? Like, and it wasn't like back how it is now, like social media, YouTube. It wasn't like that. It was like you went to races, you put in good results, people saw you, and they, oh, I want that person to ride. They can bring our team some the wins to get a national championship as a team, whatever. Um, but for me, there was at the time, I think I must have been like 16, 17 ish, maybe 17. There's a team called Spinners Redline that was based out of Raleigh. We're a great national team that started in a lot of great riders like from the East Coast or in the Raleigh area where I was racing at. So they got picked. They started this team, and then I was just always like around, like hanging out with these people, racing some of them, and got to a point where I was making main events at nationals, and then um, it must have been that year I was telling you about when I was like at the Grand Nationals. So in BMX, they have a thing called a NAG plate, like NAG is like National Age Group plate. So
Okay.
at the time when I was racing, there's like top 10. Like you got a top 10 plate. It's a gray background plate with a black number. It's like a big deal. Like you're like, oh, I'm NAG 8. NAG number 1 means you're the number 1 person in your age group, in the X age group, whatever age group you're in. That whole year I've been working really hard, just getting better, working on my skill. Made that main event, and I think Bob, the team manager, who I'm still really good friends with. He's awesome. You should check him out, Bob O'Gorman. Like he's a really great athlete. Does a lot of bike packing and road racing now, but he I'd been hanging out with him. Super nice guy, always had me around. And then somewhere towards the end of that year, after I made that main event at the Grands, he was like, hey, at the regular race, the regular track, he's like, hey, I want to bring someone up. I want to introduce a new rider. And I was just like, oh, I'm not thinking. I'm on the starting hill just hanging out. And then he's like, Brett Butterman, come on up here. I'm like, what? So like I'm
Wait,
like,
that's
huh?
me.
Me? He's like, yeah, come over here. And I'm like, and everyone starts clapping. It was really cool. Everyone starts clapping. And he's like, this guy, he started saying like really nice things about me. This guy's worked really hard this year. great rider, great attitude, and I feel like he just sits on like how he wanted me to be on their national team. And they at the time they were traveling like all up and down the East Coast, West Coast races as well, Arizona, California. And at the time, there was not a lot of East Coast teams doing that. But yeah, so he, welcomed me on that team, and that pretty much like opened up the world for racing for me, like big time. Like, starting going to California, West Coast, all up and down, like everything paid for. Which our title sponsor was Redline Bikes, so we got all the Redline frames and um, all that stuff, for free, and that just really. I was on that team. I got really spoiled with that team because they really took good care of me, and like everyone on that team now, I'm still friends with. And it was like literally like family. Like even now, like if any of them call me up right now, I'd be like, "What do you need? Like what? How can I help?" They do the same for me. So yeah, Spinners Redline picked me up. I rode for them for a long time. I turned pro with them. Um, got that national age group plate the first time. Then the second year, I ended up
What
getting.
ranking did you get on that?
The first year, I wasn't sponsored. I was still riding platform or flat pedals. I got Nag 8. Oh, no, excuse me, Nag 10. I finished that. I got it top 10. I had enough finishes, great finishes throughout the year that I got top 10. And I was the only dude on flat pedals then, which was like sort of unheard of. Um, and
That's pretty cool when like you're doing something different than everyone, but you keep like dominating everyone because it's
yeah,
like you can't tell you to use clips now because you're still winning. So it's like, just do what you want.
yeah, and it was like I wasn't like that time I wasn't that great of a starter, but I could really work my track speed, like my skill through the pack. Like I could mess up on the start, or I had to pull on other things to help me progress because I didn't have clips, and even though I could beat some people with clips, I wasn't like quite dominating everybody, but like I could get. I won silver nationals that year, 6 or 7, and yeah, it was really cool that I got picked up by that team, and then from there, I got from after Spinners, I ended up concluding at some point, which was really sad, but I got some other sponsors at the time just from knowing people in the industry, and but it was never quite like that Spinners Redline team. So that was yeah, that's how it happened for me. So we're just right
That's
place,
so
right
awesome because
time.
I love that like biking took you across the country, took you to Paris. Like that's pretty special. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. BMX like has been. I grew up in a small town called Clayton, North Carolina, which is not so small anymore. But a small little country town, and like by middle school, I'd travel all up and down the East Coast, and by high school, I was like going to Arizona, Phoenix, San Diego, Roseville, Sacramento for races, and these people. I'm like, I remember all these my friends in high school, like, you were just in California. I'm like, yeah, like they're like riding a bike. When I used to get made fun all the time, like that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, for riding bikes, and people were just like, but my core friends were really down for it. But yeah, it really opened up the door, like racing Paris. Nothing compared to like what some of my friends and other people do that travel. Yeah, Puerto Rico, Nanaimo, Canada, Paris, all up and down the West Coast, all over the country, like Southeast, Central. It really did open the door for me. So
And
really
you're going to
awesome.
all these places and you're like, I'm from Clayton. And they're like, where the heck is Clayton?
Yeah, I remember going to Phoenix one time, and like the people, you get to know all these people, like because you're on this. It's the same national circuit every year. It's like the same, you know, same. You're racing the same people in your class every year, and you get to know them. Some people are nice. Some people are just think they're too cool. Think they're like too good to talk to you because they're from wherever. But I remember like going like to California and like the Phoenix races, like West Coast, and they'd be like, where like people would hear me talk, and it's funny because down here in the South, other people hear me talk, and they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, from here. And they're like, there's a lot of transplants here now, and they're like, no, like where are you from? I'm like, here, born and raised Raleigh, North Carolina, Clayton, Johnson County. They're like, what? you're from the South? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no way, you don't sound like you're from here. But then when I would go like to California or like West Coast, the people would hear me talk or say something, y'all, they're like, what? What are you?
Yeah, they're like, "Ooh,"
Yeah,
because I get
they're
the
like,
same thing.
where are you from? Like from the East Coast, from the South. And they're like, oh, whoa, that's this. But so it was just
Yeah, that's so funny
yeah,
because like I'm from Boone, and so when people like when I would travel, people would ask me the same thing. They're like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "I'm from Boone." They're like, "What?" And when I used to talk with a really thick Southern accent, and when I got my first like professional job, I was like, I have to work this out of my vocabulary.
no,
And so every once in a while, like when I go back, I can hear the twang start to pick up again, and I'm like, we got to leave right now.
yeah. It depends on like who I talk to. Like some of my family members, um, that have more deep Southern accent, like it comes out. Or if I'm talking to some of my friends that are like have more of a countries like really deep Southern twang or draw,
Hmm.
like it comes out even more.
Yeah, the
And so,
y'alls start flying, and
yeah,
like,
yeah. And it's just like I mean, it's I love it, but it's like funny how like it's interesting how like a bike passion for a bike and just liking racing. Or it's taken me all over. I've met people from all over the world, and I have friends all over the place. Even though I don't race anymore, I still have a ton of people that I'm still tight with. And if I ever need anything, they'd be like, "Hey, man, what do you need?" Like, but or some of them I still I still ride with, or might just end up doing a trip to the mountains and then run into someone. I did that riding Canuga last year. Ran into someone and that I used to race with on the national team. Bumped into
oh,
him,
that's
and
awesome.
yeah, it was really cool. We got to ride like 2 days together, and it was like old times. It's like when we were back
Yeah,
in
that's
17,
sweet.
18. Now we're riding mountain bikes and doing a little different thing, but pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that's so cool.
BMX forever, and then now I'm still riding BMX. I rode BMX this morning with one of my childhood heroes, Lee Ramsdale, as a team manager at Mongoose, and I remember having. It's just so cool how cycling in general like comes full circle. I mean, if you're like, I feel like I try to be kind and nice to everyone, just because I feel like that's how everyone should be. We're all humans, and we're all trying to make it through this thing called life.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
everyone doesn't matter where you. Everyone has a tough times in life. There's no one that has it. There's no perfect life. There's no. So I just when I meet people, whether beginner or like some pro, I treat them the same, and it's really cool overall how BMX is full or bikes are full circle. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And so for all the listeners, I strongly encourage you. I'm going to put the links down below, but I strongly encourage you to go follow Brandon on Instagram because it will make your day and it will get you so fired up and amped just to go ride. So follow him on Instagram. It would totally be worth it.
thanks for that, man. Yeah, I mean, and then as far as just while I'm on here, like some of the sponsors that I have, like Mongoose especially, they really helped me out. They're like a big family over there. They got some cool things coming uh, for the future. I'm really excited to see. You guys will see soon. But Mongoose bikes, Wilderness Trail bikes, WTB, they're awesome over there too. And then Cane Creek for helping me out with some suspension stuff. But yeah, dude, thank you for having me on. This has been a treat, and I hope hopefully it was good. But it was I've been waiting all day to do this, and sorry for all the planning, but I've been waiting to do this with you again. So this is really fun.
Oh man, no worries. I wouldn't change it for anything, dude, because I love talking to you. Like, for one, you're so knowledgeable and you have like such a history. So it's great. And I really wanted everyone to hear it. So just to have you on and be able to have this conversation with you, I'm like, hashtag blessed, man. It's awesome.
Well, thanks, man. Little boop, fist bump there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully, now that you're back, hopefully we'll be able to ride sometime and meet up. But dude, thank you
yeah,
so
absolutely.
much.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the episode. Everyone, once again, go follow Brandon on Instagram and just give him a follow, watch his stuff. You will be motivated to ride. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for being a part of
Yeah,
it.
thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, Elijah.